Welcome, 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 family. In this episode, I'm going to share with you what wealthy people actually invest in. And before I go into it here, give you a little background on how we got here. So after being in the industry, financial service industry, as a quote unquote financial advisor, for about 20 years, I started to ask some questions when I got into my early 40s. Started to look at my, retirement accounts and start to ask myself the hard question, like, man, will I actually be able to retire and maintain my current lifestyle? So I didn't question whether or not I would be able to retire. Right, I could retire and live on half of what I was, or a third of what my current lifestyle is. So we have that in place. But why would I want to work for 20, 30, 40 years and then retire on a half or a third of what I was used to living on? When I want to be, I decided then, hey, something isn't right. Something's not adding up. The math is not mathing, right? So started to do a deep dive. And in doing my deep dive, what I started to do was interview some of the most successful people I know personally, right? So this wasn't, oh, I'm just gonna, research, this billionaire or what have you, though I do that. But what I wanted to do was actually have a live conversation with some of the wealthiest people that I know. And some of these wealthy people have sold their businesses for 8 figures. It was funny. I was sitting with my book club yesterday, and they're like 8 figures. I was like, yeah, between 10 and 99 million. And they're like, oh, yeah, right. So I actually had a conversation with a good friend of mine who sold his business for 8 figures. Had a have a standing quarterly meeting with another entrepreneur in the tax space who works with multiple billionaires, and just ask him how he invests his money and how the billionaires are investing their money, right? So I went directly to the sources to get these answers because something just was not adding up. And if you're listening to this, right, more than likely you're, making money. You done figured out how to make money, and now you're trying to figure out, like, hey, what does this financial freedom look like, right? That we hear people talk about. What is this generational wealth that we hear people discuss all the time? Well, let me give you just a quick takeaway here. If you want to really know how people are becoming financially free, you're going to have to get out of your bubble. You're going to have to get out of your current environment, and you're going to have to go to the source. You're going to have to actually have a conversation with somebody who is doing the dang thing and just ask some questions, right? Because what you want to be able to do is start to understand how they think. What you want to be able to do is understand what they do, right? And even getting as granular as, like, hey, what time do you wake up? What time, do you go to bed? What is your morning ritual? How do you think? How did you know this was going to be a good investment for you, right? You want to become a expert question asking person, right? You want to be an expert at asking questions because the solution you're looking for is typically one question away. All right, so let me kind of get into the story here. So I was telling my book club yesterday, said, hey, we were having this conversation about a book we're reading, and it came up like, man, with so much information out there, who do you listen to? Who do you trust? Because you'll have, one financial person saying this is how you create wealth, and you have another financial person saying this is how you create wealth. Well, versus listening to those, different concepts, if you will, those different theories. One way to just cut to the chase is just to go to the most successful people you know and ask them how they did it and why they did it and what they were thinking about, right? That's one way that you can typically close that knowledge gap is by effectively finding a mentor. If you're not a millionaire yet, the fastest way to become a millionaire is actually get mentored by a millionaire who's already done it, right? Fastest way to become a multimillionaire, if you're already a millionaire, is to find a multimillionaire who's done it and actually go talk to them and see what they actually did, right? So that's what I did. So long story short, I have a good friend of mine And we first met each other probably had to be 15 years ago, 15, maybe even 20 years ago now. I had just got into the, financial service industry, and I was going around town, and I made it my mission to meet, introduce myself to some of the most successful black owned businesses in the city that I was in. Right. And in doing that, came across his company, and he took my meeting and sat down and, you know, told him what I did and all of those things. And from there, we just continued to just grow a relationship. Now, this relationship lasted and still goes on right now. So this is now going on 2 decades of relationship. Well, ask me this question, Perry, did he ever become a client? The answer is no. Now, he would always support my business venture. So if I, started an online course, he would invest and sign up, spend $1,000 here, $1,000 there. But did he ever become a wealth management client? And the answer is no. So one time we were sitting down and, I'm pitching to him a 401k for the business and things of that nature. And he said to me, he said, Perry, so we have a 401k for our employees. I said, okay. He said, but I don't invest in it. I said, you don't invest in it. He's like, no. I said, well, why? Well, he told me straight up, he says, I don't believe in putting money someplace that I don't have any control over it. And I said, interesting. I said, so where do you put your money? He said, you're looking at it. I reinvest back into my business. I reinvest into my knowledge, right? He says, I have insurance policies to protect the family and things of that nature. But where I invest my money is not into an account where I have no control over how the value goes up and down. Because inside your 401k or your investment account, you are subject to the market. And if you're watching this at this point in time and of the year, right, we're seeing high volatility in the market. And we're seeing with the tariffs and the potential trade wars coming down. I think I read at the gym today when I was on the treadmill that we are experiencing the worst month ever in a stock market since March of 2020, I believe. Right. So he's like, I'm not going to put my money there. Now he said, and I have the 401k set up for my employees if they want to invest there. I just won't put my money there. I said, interesting. So fast forward a couple years, right? And he and I are still very good friends. We see each other at the gym and, shoot the stuff and crack up, what I'm saying? So we really get along well. And I hit him up one day and I said, hey fam, where are you? I haven't seen you at the gym. And he said, hey man, left town. And he showed me, he did a FaceTime and he showed me this beautiful home. I said, dude, where are you? He's like, yo, I moved. I said, you sold the business, didn't you? He's like, yeah. So he sold his business for 8 figures. Okay. So that is, so a million is seven, right? 10 million is the beginning of 8 figures. So anywhere between 10 and 99 million, he sold his business for. So I remember going down to visit him and we were, moving, getting close to his home. And it was like we were in the twilight zone because as we were getting close to his home, we started seeing these carports because we were down south. But in these carports, there weren't cars. It was planes and helicopters. And me and my wife were looking at each other like, where in the world are we? So we found out that, she ended up buying a home cash for a couple $1 million in an area that was actually set aside for individuals who had private airplanes and helicopters. I said, oh my goodness. And I remember sitting there talking to him. I said, man, you really did this thing. And it got me thinking. I was like, man, I was, pitching to him to put in, 5 or 10% into this 401k that he couldn't touch till he was 59 and a half. And when those dollars come out at 59 and a half, hopefully it's a big enough nest egg to replace his lifestyle. And but I can't tell you how much the taxes are going to be because nobody knows what the taxes are going to be. All we know is going to be taxed as ordinary income. So if tax rates, double or triple over the next, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, which we do believe is going to happen, well then, so instead of him taking my recommendation of putting money away into the traditional 401k, he invested in his knowledge, he invested in coaches, he worked closely with mentors, and he reinvested back into his business, which he knew. And then he was able to exit with more money, probably 100x more money than he would have had he, supported me and invested and took my, well, not supported me because he always supported me, but had he took my recommendation, right, to invest in a 401k. And he's not 59 and a half. So he wouldn't even be able to, use the dollars to his fullest because he's not at the quote unquote age to be able to take money out. So I'm like, man, this is wild. So that's when he put me on to a quote that we use today. And he said, yeah, man, we've always lived by this mantra to be prudently frugal and selectively extravagant. And I said, man, as we're sitting outside on this huge pool deck, right, in the summertime, beautiful weather. And I said, that's amazing. I said, prudently frugal and selectively extravagant. He's like, yeah, we don't overspend on our day to day stuff. But when we want to go up top, and go luxury, we're in a position to do that. So prudently frugal and selectively extravagant. So he told me he didn't make that up. He actually gave me the book. He referenced the book. The book was called The Jewish Phenomena. So I got the book. He probably didn't think I was going to get the book, but I got the book immediately. I read it probably over a weekend, as I do with a lot of books, and reached out to him like a week or two later and said, hey, man, I read the book. Let's discuss it. Right. And in that book, it talks about the strategies of creating wealth for the people. And in that, never once did it say, hey, invest in the stock market. Now, understand me here. I'm not anti stock market. I invest in the stock market, but that is something that is running in the background on autopilot, where I dollar cost average into it. I'm not sitting up stressing about whether or not the market is down or not. I'm not going and looking at the news. I'm not pulling up my statements like, oh my gosh, because that is something that is running on autopilot, which I will continue to do. But I spend my time and energy creating wealth as the way I learned it in the book, the Jewish Phenomenon. So I share that with you to say that, man, I'm glad he didn't take my advice. And I wish I had leaned more into his strategy of reinvesting back into the business. Because at that time that I was prospecting him as a client, I had, I kind of dabbled in entrepreneurship, but I wasn't all in the way I am right now. So something I'm started to start to pull back was as I started to interview these millionaires, these multimillionaires, they were all entrepreneurs. And I'm not saying that you can't become rich being not being a, saying with a W-2, but I am saying that you can accelerate your wealth creation and truly become wealthy with entrepreneurship. I think you have to get your head wrapped around that. All right, so talking to another friend of mine, and took him out for lunch because I was like, dude, I got to hear your story, right? I got to understand how you think, and sat down with him, had lunch with him, and I said, hey man, so what do you invest in? And he said, no, I first asked him, I said, hey man, so keep it 100 with me. What's the net worth number? And he's like, yeah, I think he told me at that time he's close to 90 million, I believe. I said, whew, okay. 90 million, almost at 100 million. That's mind blowing, right? He's like, yeah, um, my kids will never have to work a day in their life, but they're gonna work because they're gonna learn to know the value of work, but they won't have to work, right? And I'm like, that is mind blowing. And this is someone who's actually younger than me. So I heard his story and asked him, so what do you invest in? He said, I invest in land, I invest in real estate, I invest in privately held businesses. I said, do you invest in the stock market? He said, no. I said, do you have a retirement plan? He said, no. So, okay, so I'm starting to see a recurring theme here, right? I said, okay, but you do invest. He said, absolutely, because you want more money to grow. So cash flow generating assets, he invests in businesses, land, real estate, right? Told me that he has, massive cash value life insurance policies. So now I'm connecting the dots here. I said, okay. And then obviously he invests in his business. And I said, so when you're working with, your billionaire clients, what are they investing in? He said, we're setting up, they're going to structure the right way because he runs a family office. So, between, the attorneys and himself and the other advisors, right? They may have a portfolio, but what they're looking at is, hey, how can we grow the wealth via real estate? Investing in businesses, private equity, lending money, things of that nature. So I'm like, wow, reoccurring theme here, right? And also too, I remember one day we were hanging out with each other, and he was wearing a watch, beautiful watch. And I said, dude, what? That's a gorgeous watch. He took it off his wrist, gave it to me. He said, oh, put it on. I said, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. I said, what is this? He said, this is a Patek Philippe. I said, no idea what that is. He said, you don't know what that is, Perry? I said, no. He said, in your financial industry, you're not familiar? I said, no. I said, where does it compare to a Rolex? He's like, it doesn't. I said, okay, like higher? Oh, so fast forward, the watch he gave me and put in my hand very nonchalantly was valued at $250,000. He put a $250,000 watch in my hand. And I know it was $250,000. He actually tracks his watches on an app the same way that we track stocks. So he put up his app and showed all of his watches, his Rolex, his Patek Philippe's, and things of that nature. And he's actually tracking it in real time, the value, and watching how to appreciate. And he said, yeah, you're invested in the stock market, right? Yeah. He said, what's the stock market average? I said, let's call it, 10% if it's doing okay. He said, okay. He said, my watches are averaging 20 to 30%. He said, so that's where I store my wealth. And I'm sitting there just mind blown by the concept, right? It's like this is just a whole nother level. So again, hey y'all, there's levels to this. I'm even experiencing new levels as I interview people. So again, this is someone who is an entrepreneur, has a business, right? But learn at a very early age, as what we learn in the book, The Jewish Phenomenon, is, he learned how to add value to the marketplace. He learned estate planning and accounting and all of these things. When he told me he was reading his first accounting book, I think he said when he was 6 or 7 years old, right? And he learned how to do that by working with, his grandfather and things of that nature. So I'm like, this is just mind blowing, right? So I got another friend, a very good friend of mine, and I went out to visit him one day. I said, "Hey man, I got to come out and see you because we were having some conversations." And I was like, "Hey man, so what's the goal?" He said, "The goal is to be worth $1 billion, in the next 15 years." I said, "Okay." So it's not a lot of people that walk around using the B word, right? Um, there's some B words, saying that folks use, but we ain't talking about them B words. But don't use I'm talking about the billion, like use that in conversation. And I believed him. I believed him because at one point in time he had sent me a portfolio to review for him that was worth 35 million. And I'm thinking to myself, this is 35 million in this portfolio, but I know you own 800 real estate units out on the East Coast. So I said, hey man, we homies from way back. I'm coming out to see you. You ain't about to move to $1 billion and me not be able to tag along and learn something along the way. So I went out there and shouted him for a day. And we went and looked at multiple properties and the whole nine. And it was kind of wild because what he did, he started his day off with a workout. We got up early in the morning. We got to the gym, had some tea in the morning, got to the gym, worked out, came back, boom. And I actually watched him close a multi-million dollar deal in his living room. I sat there while he was on the phone. Yep. Move the money over here, move the money over there. Boom. He closed a multi-million dollar deal while sitting in his kitchen. And while we were still there in the kitchen, closed another deal when a closing agent, a traveling closing agent, signed up and he signed documents. And I'm sitting there like, okay. So I was like, all right, man. So I know you're invested in the market. He's like, yeah, but he's not managing that. He's not actively managing that. That's more of a passive piece. Hey, I got this extra cash. Let me put the cash to work for me, right? But what he used that cash for, he invested into the market and invested in different funds. But that wasn't the end of the play. What he did was he was then able to leverage that, 30 million, $35 million portfolio to get a line of credit for over 20 million. And then he's actually using that line of credit for 20 million to go out here and acquire more businesses and acquire more real estate. So again, he was like, yeah, I'm not tracking that. Right. I'm building my wealth this way. But since I have this cash on hand, let me have this cash work for me, use that as collateral to get access to a huge line of credit and let the dividends from that portfolio pay the interest on a line of credit while he uses the 20 million to go out and create more wealth. So again, I'm seeing these reoccurring themes here. So I'm like, ooh wee. So I started building, and this is how I end up building my wealthy framework was from these interviews. So from these interviews and doing a bunch of studying. So my challenge to you is this: you gotta be inquisitive. You have to be a master of the words why and how, right? So I'm gonna give you a couple things, right, to think about that may blow your mind with respects to how the truly wealthy invest. So first and foremost, what the wealthy invest in is knowledge in excess. Every person I spoke to either invested in coaching, they invested in masterminds or some type of private education. They are all students, ongoing students. They never stop learning. They understand the importance of sometimes paying to get into the room. Even if they don't need the info, they know that just being in the room is where the deals happen. So they'll join a mastermind and spend 20, 30, 50, 100,000, $200,000 to be in the room. Because if you're in a room with people who are invested in themselves that way, you are building your network, and that is how deals get done. We hear about deals getting done on the golf course, right? Well, imagine being in a room with other individuals who are investing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars into their personal growth and development. Imagine if you were in that room for a year, right? Meeting monthly or bi-weekly, whatever the case may be. How fast could you create some riches and some wealth, right? And again, wealthy people don't ask how much does it cost. They ask how fast will it get me there, right? So that's how you actually close the gap. That's how you condense time frames. Hey, and I got it because I was in a mastermind I was spending $10,000 on, and I remember traveling out to LA to one of the mastermind sessions to meet everybody in person. And I walked out of there with multiple clients. I walked out of there with more knowledge and information. I was a better person. I was able to apply that not only to my business as an entrepreneur, but also to my family as a husband and as a dad, right? So they understand knowledge and access and personal growth. They understand that their wealth will never outpace their personal growth and development. Think about it. When you go to college, what are you paying for? You're paying to, get that stamp of approval that says that you completed something, right? I know this. This is my certificate that says that I completed this and I know this and I am more valuable now. So because my value with this degree is, possibly higher than the value, more valuable than a person who just has the high school diploma with the value of this degree, I expect to get paid more. Well, they understand the same concept. They just don't go about it traditionally. They go about it privately. They go about it by joining masterminds and things of that nature. So knowledge and access. Another thing that I find that I'm sorry, that the wealthy invest in that we don't think about is they invest in health and longevity. Here's the deal, family. There's nothing new underneath the sun. If somebody else can go out and become a millionaire and create wealth, you can do the same thing. I mean, you might not be able to do it the way they did it, but you can learn what they did and learn from them. But a lot of the challenges that I see people have is y'all don't have the energy. You're working your 9 to 5, you put in 8 hours, and after that, man, you just want to relax, watch some Netflix and chill, things of that nature. But you're not putting the time in to actually learn how to create wealth, because creating wealth is a skill set. Just like shooting a free throw, just like hitting a golf ball, it is a skill set. Well, one of the reasons you don't have the energy is because your health is not optimized. Wealthy people pay for personal trainers. Wealthy people pay for doctors and therapists. Wealthy people understand biohacking tools and eating, healthy food, organic, or having private shelves, or hormone optimization, right? They understand that, hey, if I'm not functioning at my highest capacity, I can go out here and get the bag the way I want to because I don't have the energy to do it, right? Because they understand that time is the ultimate flex. So, what sense does it make to have all the riches in the world if you don't have the time to enjoy it or the health to enjoy it? Imagine having, all the passive income you can imagine coming in that's covering all your monthly expenses, but you don't have the energy to enjoy it. That sucks. Who wants that, right? So they invest in health and longevity. I share this, I forgot where I heard this quote, but I share it all the time. What is the difference between being ordinary? What's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary? The only difference between, because if you say, "Oh man, that's ordinary," you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's how we say that around the way." Oh, that's Reggie. Oh, that's, or the young folks would be like, "Oh, that's mid," right? Right. But if I say, "Man, that is extraordinary," it seems like that's just levels and levels and levels above ordinary. Oh, he's ordinary. Wow. He's extraordinary. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Wow, this experience was how was that restaurant? It was ordinary. It was mid. It was Reggie. Man, how was that restaurant? Yeah, man, it was extraordinary. What did you have, man? I had, right? Like, it is a huge difference between those two. But it's one word that's different. It's just adding the extra to the ordinary. And you know how you get extra? Extra equates to energy. You have to have the energy to do the extra. If you don't have the energy to do the extra, you can't be extraordinary. You will be stuck at ordinary. So that's why your health is so important. All right. Other things that I find wealthy people invest in. When I was talking to these individuals, they invest in improving systems. They're not trying to go out and reinvent the wheel, right? They figure out how, a system that's making money, and then they run with that system, which is really mind blowing to me. Because when you think about entrepreneurs, we always think about, oh, I got to create something brand new. No, you might have a product, but the systems are principles and tried and true that go back as far as time, right? So they don't reinvent the wheel. They actually invest in a system. Hence why they buy franchises. They ain't got to think about it. Hey, this is the play that's being ran. Let me invest in and buy this franchise, buy multiple franchises. They invest in syndications where another operator is running the business, but there's a system in place that's going to drive profitability. They invest in, where they put their dollars into infinite banking so that they can actually grow their capital and have a strategy that's going to help them preserve wealth, keep up with inflation, give them access to capital if they need to, and also to provide that generational wealth piece that we talk about all the time. So wealthy people invest in systems. Broke people kind of just do it on the, like, kind of do it on the the how do they say it? Flying by the seat of their pants, right? They're just making them as they go. Wealthy people identify what is the successful system and let me run with that. Other things wealthy people invest in: cash flow machines, right? When you start to redirect your energy towards, oh, I got to accumulate and save, which is a scarcity mindset. Ooh, hoard it. I gotta save. Oh my gosh, I'm stressed out when the market goes up and down. I have so much anxiety because I'm losing money based on something I can't control. Versus going out and having an abundance mindset and acquiring cash flow generating assets. When you start to move into that space, you start to have just a totally different perspective on things. You start to realize that cash flow is infinitely more important than a nest egg, right? So they're always looking for ways to generate cash flow. That's their mantra. Does this cash flow? I remember calling up the same friend that has the 800 properties before I bought my property, and we were about to spend close to $1 million on our home. And I remember hitting him up because I'm scared to death. Like I've spent money, but I've never had a $900,000 ticket, right? $900,000 purchase. And I'm like, man, this is what's going on, bro. The market is down. I don't want to cash out retirement plans and things of that nature. I'm gonna have to come up with a couple $100,000 down payment, but I could get a loan on my business to fund this, right? And because my business is cash flowing really well, I could get, a loan from the business based on the business cash flow and profitability. And I'm like, man, but the payment on that is going to be this. And he asked me a simple question. He says, P, does it cash flow? I said, well, yeah, my business is doing well. It's doing, whatever, 50 grand a month, averaging, 40, 50 grand a month. Um, he says, so by taking on that quote unquote debt, which is going to get you into your dream home as of today, subject to change, but your dream home as of today, and if the debt service is covered by the business, It cash flows positive, correct? I said, yeah. He said, if it cash flows, then it makes sense. And I was like, man, this is how wealthy people think. They don't think about how much it costs. They think, hey, can I acquire an asset? And the asset could be growing my business. The asset could be investing, in the market on the back end. The asset could be your infinite banking, cash value policy, right? It could be other real estate. But they're like, hey, will this asset cash flow? That's their focus. So that's why they look at things like, rentals and digital products and self-storage and car washes and buying businesses and things of that nature, right? Because that's how they are wired. They're looking at, hey, let me look at assets that cash flow. So it's never a question of can I afford it? It's a question of does it cash flow? Can I cash flow it? For me to afford this vehicle, this luxury vehicle that I love, it's not coming out of my pocket. It's cash flowed by the business. The business covers it. So when I bought my Range Rover and I bought my wife a luxury vehicle, right? It was never about, oh, can we afford it? It's, hey, what asset do we need to acquire or grow that's going to give us the cash flow to pay for it? It's just a different way of thinking, family. All right, let's keep on moving. Other things that the wealthy people invest in. Real estate, we already kind of talked about it. Every one of these three people that I spoke to invested in real estate. Everyone has a business. Everyone and all of them invest in other businesses and franchise, cleaning companies and things of that nature. Vending machines, laundromats. They invest in land, right? Short-term rentals, mid-term rentals. They invest in luxury items. Never would I thought that, a watch could outperform the stock market, right? Like, that's just a whole different way of thinking. Like when we say there's levels, there are levels, right? Geesh. So something to consider there. So that's how the wealthy actually invest, family, right? So let's break that down again. One, they invest in knowledge and access. They invest in private education so they can learn how to condense time frames and get there faster. They invest to be in the room with other like-minded or other successful people who are actually maybe even doing it better than them, to be in the room, to be able to connect with them and build those relationships because they truly understand that their net worth is their network. Their network is their net worth, right? They invest in health. You got to have energy to go out here and get it done. Like if you drag in and you have no energy, how do you expect to be extraordinary? You'll be stuck at ordinary for your entire life. And man, do you want to at the end of your life, right, and you're laying there and in the closing moments and you're thinking to yourself, was my life ordinary or was it extraordinary? Man, there's just a big difference with that word extra. And to have to have extra, you got to have energy, right? They invest in systems. They're not out here trying to figure it out. They're going and saying, hey, what systems work and how can I apply those systems into what I'm currently doing? Or let me find something that is systematically kicking on profit and cash flow and let me go double down on that. Cash flow machines. Hey, it's not, hey, can I afford it? It's, does it cash flow? Words like that word set me free, allow me to get into the home we're currently in now. Home now is appraising at a rapid rate. Now I can use this home because of how quickly it appraised and my strategy to pay down the principal and accelerate that piece and not pay a lot in interest. Allow me to get another line of credit to then go out and we're using that line of credit to buy vending machines and buy more real estate and more cash flow generating assets. And I don't know if I would have crossed that bridge had I not reached out to my wealthy multi-millionaire friend who's getting close to being a billion and say, hey man, I'm I don't know what to do right here. Can you help me out? Yeah. Does it cash flow? Jesus. And real assets, real estate, land, businesses, franchises, laundromats, things of that, luxury items that appreciate, artwork, right? So that's how wealthy people invest, right? So a couple of things I'm going to leave you here with is this. Not only do they invest in assets that cash flow, but they realize everything ain't for them, right? So they invest in what they call their, based on their investor DNA. Your investor DNA is just simply how, your personality type, right? So based on your personality type, what is a good investment for you? Everything ain't for everybody. Could you imagine being a multimillionaire and having how many times people will come to you and say, "Hey man, won't you invest in this? Hey man, won't you invest in this?" This is how a lot of professional athletes go broke. E- Everybody know they got the money and they running them down like, "Hey man, invest in my nightclub. Hey man, invest in my business. Hey man, I got a real estate deal," right? When you start to really get crystal clarity around your investor DNA, now you start to filter through all of the noise and you can zone in on what is a good fit for you. Everything ain't for you. The stock market ain't for everybody, right? Real estate ain't for everybody, right? There's different ways to create passive income and give yourself financial freedom. You have to figure out what your personality type is and what aligns with your investor DNA, right? They understand they invest to create time, not just money. So they're not, oh, I'm investing to make money, right? When we're sitting down and we're working with clients, you know, we get a very good understanding of their why, but more importantly, we want to get a better idea of what the destination is. The destination is the most important, right? And the destination should be time freedom. So the question is, how much monthly recurring income, how much passive or semi passive income do you need to buy your time back? So we're not investing to have a huge nest egg, we're investing to buy our time back. So when you start to think about that, it's like, oh, I'm not investing just to get a, you know what I'm saying, to get a 20% return. No, I'm investing to get cash flow coming in that can pay my bills, that gives me the peace of mind and the freedom to know that I don't have to work or trade my time for dollars. Okay. All right. They prioritize strategy over savings, right? What is the play? What is the strategy, right? Not, oh, let me set this money in the corner. I just hope it grows and keep up with inflation. No, what strategy can I implement where I can use those dollars or use that capital that I have access to then go out and give myself more freedom and give and be able to, hey, afford the luxury vehicle that I want to drive, right? Or afford to dream home or afford to send my kids to private school. Like we were kind of crossing the bridge of, hey, you know, considering sending our kids to private school, right? And private school we're looking at was coming in about 30,000 a month. I'm sorry, 30,000 a year, right? So I'm like, man. So immediately I went to the broke middle class mindset and said, man, we can't afford 30,000 versus the abundance mindset. 30,000 comes out to being 30,000 divided by 12, $2,500 a month. What asset could I go out and acquire that's going to give me $2,500 a month? Well, guess what? I found it. We found some vending machines that are projected to kick out 2, 3 grand a month. Two vending machines pays for private school. It's a different way of thinking, family. Y'all are y'all following me here? Geesh. And they bet on health and knowledge first, right? Foundationally, if I'm not good physically, if I'm not good mentally, if I'm not good spiritually, how in the world can I be good in the marketplace and go out here and create wealth? So they understand how important it is. That's why we prioritize working out in our home. You know, I've tried to wake up at 4:15 in the morning, been struggling the past couple days, but usually I'm at the gym by like 5, right? My day is better, I'm more alert, and I was able to prioritize and put first things first. Making money ain't what's first. My relationship with God is what's first. My relationship with my family is, you know, some what's first. But my health is coming right up there because when we look at our 6 F's, they go in this order: faith, family, friends, fitness, fun, finance, right? So I got it, you know, for me to show up and be there and provide for my family and had the energy to be a good husband, but shoot, had the energy to be a good dad. Geez, like we got teenage girls. Shout out to anybody who got teenage kids. It's wild in these streets, right? But but y'all follow me, right? So energy is so important. Your health is so important. So a quick recap here, family. You don't have to duplicate their net worth, right? They may have had some advantages or some experiences or access to people that you may not have, right? But you do have to duplicate and copy their mindset. Start to look at your situation differently. Understand, for you to be for financial freedom for me may be, hey, Perry, when you get to the point that you have $10,000 a month coming in, passively to cover your monthly nut because my monthly expenses are 10,000, or if my monthly expenses are 20,000, everybody's different. Your monthly expenses might be 5,000, might be 3,000. So what you have to do is going to be different than what I have to do, but we're pushing towards the same goal if the goal is to be financially free, right? So understanding you have to change the way you think. You have to start thinking about how the wealthy create wealth, right? Right? They don't scatter their money across a whole bunch of trends. They stack. They have. They typically grow their businesses. They have to take that profit from the businesses, and they're able to leverage those profits and get access to more capital and things of that nature, right? To then go out and invest in these things. But they're always looking to buy their time back. That is what true wealth is time freedom. Okay. All right, y'all. So let's finish this bad boy and on and get you guys out of here. The truth is, um, we can learn from the wealthy. If you don't have someone wealthy you can reach out to, right, personally, and I know that's my blessing. That's one of the reasons we created our Millionaire Mastermind Mentorship Program, was because I was like, man, I am so blessed because I have so many multimillionaires and super successful people that I can reach out to that will take my call, right? And I bring those mentors to our mentorship program. So my tribe can get mentored by those people. But if you don't have those mentors, like, study. But I will challenge you this. There are some extremely successful people walking around who are probably in your network that you just have never reached out to and said, hey, from the looks of it, you're pretty successful. Can I take you out for a cup of coffee? Can I buy you lunch? Can I buy you dinner? Right? Can I swing by the house and bring you a bottle of bourbon? Right? Whatever the case may be. But can I buy some? Matter of fact, just, hey, can I buy an hour of your time to ask you questions? Right? So much information is there, right? Nothing new underneath the sun. And what's wild is truly successful people love to share how they did it because they want to, truly successful people want to see other people be successful as well. So keep that in mind. All right, y'all. So let's close this bad boy out. Wealth isn't built by accident. It's built on purpose by people who invest in themselves first and everything else second. All right. Before we get out of here, y'all, if this was valuable to you, right, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and do us a huge favor. Drop in the comment section, what you learned that was valuable, right? That you learned that you can share. And be sure to share this episode as well. But more importantly, hit the like button, subscribe so you can stay locked in with us. And we're gonna go ahead and move to the next level. Because this is how we spread financial freedom, by unlocking cash flow one mind at a time. In order to unlock the infinite amount of cash flow and abundance to flow into your life, you first have to unlock your mind. And then you can unlock the cash flow second. All right, y'all, I'm Perry Jeffries. This is Cash Flow Unlocked, where your money starts to work harder than you do. Until next time, stay focused, stay free, and stay cash flow positive. All right, family. Peace.